Now to an almost comical claim from Biden's press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre. Apparently, violent crime in the US is at a 50-year low, and Americans are now much safer under Joe Biden.
Under this president's leadership, President Biden, violent crime is at a nearly 50-year low. Thanks to the extraordinary efforts of law enforcement and community leaders, Americans are safer from violent crime today than they were a year ago.
But Josh, something about that doesn't seem to stack up. What else, I wonder, could be influencing those crime stats?
So, Rita, let's recall that when Joe Biden took office, he took office in January of 2021. Violent crime had just massively spiked in the year of 2020 as a result of the summer of love that happened that summer, the summer of the great martyr St. George Floyd, the Black Lives Matter Antifa riots that saw violent crime and property crime just astronomically skyrocketing all across the major urban corridors and many suburban towns as well throughout the United States of America. We saw decades high murder, rape, property crime rates. I mean, just horrific stuff, petty theft, larceny. All of it was through the roof. America was essentially a crime cesspool for 2020 into 2021. So that is relevant when you're talking about crime decreasing because it's all relative to where you started. So, crime has been decreasing over the past year and a half or so of Joe Biden's presidency, but decreasing from what? I mean, decreasing from a catastrophic baseline. And then getting aside from the national average for a second here and just focusing on the major cities that matter, focusing on New York City, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco. In these cities, violent crime, property crime have never actually been higher than they have than it is currently right now. Los Angeles, New York City, you name it. I just got back, actually. I was in New York for a wedding just over the past week or so. Virtually everyone I talked to there, they're not even going on the subway at this point because they are genuinely just afraid for their lives of getting pushed into an oncoming subway car from a so-called innocent bystander there on the New York City subway. As a native New Yorker myself, I recall taking the subway many times back when it was considered relatively safe. It is safe no more. So there's a lot of gaslighting here. It kind of reminds me, of course, of that famous quote, which I believe is attributed to Mark Twain, where he said that there are three kinds of numbers in this world, or three kinds of statements. There are lies, there are damned lies, and then there are statistics.
Now, Josh, to New York Governor Kathy Hochul, a Democrat, of course. She's proven again how bigoted the left can be. She actually said that black kids in the Bronx don't know what the word computer means. Have a listen.
Young black kids growing up in the Bronx who don't even know what the word computer is. They don't know. They don't know these things.
It's just an incredible thing to say, Josh. Has she ever been to the Bronx? Has she met any black people? This is the bigotry of low expectations.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head there, Rita. I mean, this is the so-called soft bigotry of low expectations. That's the line that George W. Bush famously used, and he was spot on. It was one of the most memorable lines that President Bush probably ever said, frankly, was this notion of the soft bigotry of low expectations, which really imbues the entire idea of affirmative action as well, which the U.S. Supreme Court finally undid in the Harvard and University of North Carolina litigation last summer. Justice Clarence Thomas, who himself, of course, is a black man and a very conservative and originalist constitutionalist at that, one of the many reasons that Justice Thomas has repeatedly invaded against and decried America's affirmative action and identity politics regime, more generally speaking, is exactly this notion. Now, when you have affirmative action, these programs, you will have black people that inevitably get into successful universities, into prestigious schools, into successful positions of power in the corporate world, and they're going to have this scarlet letter. They're going to have this potential badge of inferiority because of this culture that liberals and leftists in this country and in many other countries have implemented of their own accord, which is to basically say that if you are a minority, we don't expect you to do very well. And that's what Kathy Hochul is getting at here. But it's kind of funny, Rita, how leftists tend to just be able to get away with this stuff, isn't it? It kind of reminds me of Joy Reid or Joyless Reid, as I like to call her, of MSNBC. They recently just found an old blog of hers. This was uncovered a few years ago or so, where it turns out that Joy Reid was actually a vicious homophobe and was writing very frequently about gay people and had really nasty things to say. It's kind of funny how Joyless Reid managed to completely escape anything remotely resembling accountability of that. Speaking of MSNBC, how can we forget Al Sharpton, her fellow host there on MSNBC? Bear in mind the pogrom that Al Sharpton starred in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, that led to the death of the Australian Jewish man Yankel Rosenbaum back in 1991. Al Sharpton has never paid for inciting that pogrom on MSNBC. So it's funny how the rules of the road are very different, Rita. If you are a Republican in the United States, if you are Donald Trump, you find yourself in court for the pettiest imaginary non-faux crimes imaginable. If you are a Democrat saying extraordinarily bigoted things, oh, you just kind of brush your shoulder off. It's no big deal. And you go on like life is normal.
Finally, Josh, Fox News host Sean Hannity has followed in your footsteps, has announced he's done with New York. He's now putting his Long Island home on the market. He's already made the move to Florida. And there has been a mass exodus from so many blue states to red states. Democrat policies causing all sorts of havoc in cities in California and New York. What do you make of this shift? What does it say about these progressive policies? We've seen so many people move to states like Texas, Florida, Tennessee.
Yeah, they really are. So Sean, welcome to Florida. I mean, Sean has already spent a lot of time here in Florida. So this is not exactly a new state for him, but I guess it'll be new as a permanent or at least tax permanent residence for him. Look, we have, an exploding scene here of various other conservative commentators, conservative politicos such as myself. On a very personal note, Rita, I'm friends with these people. These are my friends. This is who I get drinks with, I get dinner with. We all go out and socialize together. Florida really has become kind of a burgeoning scene for conservatism in America. But more generally speaking, just looking at the migration patterns, which you're getting at here, the numbers don't lie. I mean, the 2020 census, America has a decennial census once every 10 years. The 2020 census is the last census for which we have data. Red states in America gained. Texas gained 2 seats, Florida, Tennessee, the Carolinas. These states all gained seats. What were the states that lost seats? New York, Connecticut, Illinois, California. California actually lost representation in the census and thereby also lost congressional seats, Rita, for the very first time since California became a state roughly 170 years ago or so. So, I mean, that really says all you need to know right up there. They literally ran out of U-Hauls to move people out of California in 2022, the last year for which we have data on this point. People are flooding into the Sun Belt. They're flooding into states like Texas, Florida, Tennessee, the Carolinas, because people just want good governance. They want sane policy. They want their parents to be in control of their children's curricula when their kids are at school. And, I'm biased, Rita, as a Floridian, but perhaps above all, people just want nice, warm weather as well.